It's not about how many times you fall down or how you fall down. It's about how you how you handle it afterwards, how you pick yourself up.
On for cardiac arrest, Open Mailbox 701 Aisley Bridge Road.
Aisley Bridge Road, overdose, CPR is in progress.
Boyfriend, Brian Hickerson, and his brother, Zach, were at the scene. We're at the apartment that they placed the 911 phone call. CNN is claiming the police report indicates that an officer interviewed the brothers, with the police report saying, quote, "I spoke with Zach Hickerson first. He advised this was his brother's girlfriend." CNN is also reporting that Brian Hickerson allegedly showed officers a bag of medications at the apartment.
According to his brother, her boyfriend gave her Narcan when they found her. His brother's the one who called 911, and about a week later, the DEA got involved. That's genuinely what's happening right now with the investigation into Hayden Panettiere's death. And the more you look at how fast things have moved, the more it starts to feel like there's a lot going on underneath the surface. Here's what we actually know. Hayden Panettiere died on August 16, 2026 at 36 years old in a rented apartment in Greenville, South Carolina.
Onto this. On the eve of what would have been her 37th birthday, new details are emerging surrounding the death of actress Hayden Panettiere. The star of Heroes and Nashville died Sunday after being found unresponsive at a South Carolina apartment.
In the first couple of days, police said what they usually say early on: no signs of trauma, no foul play. It looked for a moment like a quiet, tragic case that would just be waiting on toxicology results.
Well, both things are possible. When they say no evidence of foul play, no trauma, that simply suggests that there was no indication that she was beaten, stabbed, shot, or somehow violently killed. That does not mean that her death, whether it be an accidental overdose or somebody intentionally providing her with enough drugs to kill her, is not a separate crime.
Except it didn't stay quiet. Since then, a search warrant's been executed at that apartment. Federal agents from the DEA are now involved.
Fox is now learning that the DEA is stepping in to assist with the investigation, confirming that they have begun assisting local authorities. This comes after paramedics referenced a possible overdose in the 911 response, while Narcan was reportedly found at the apartment.
And police showed up at the family home of the man who was with her when she died.
We have confirmed that there was Narcan found in the apartment on one of the beds, a rollout bed in the apartment. And that Narcan, of course, you can get it over the counter, but that is used to reverse the effects of a possible opioid overdose. So somebody, whether it's Hayden or somebody else who was in that apartment, apparently used or tried to use Narcan.
So which is it? A tragic overdose, or something more complicated than that? Let's walk through everything that's actually been confirmed so far, and then get into why Hayden's own words from just a few months ago are hitting so differently now. The most detailed account of what happened that day comes from Zach Hickerson, the brother of Hayden's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brian Hickerson. Zach told TMZ that he and Brian had been trying to wake Hayden up from what they thought was a nap on the living room couch. And when she wouldn't wake up, he called 911 right away.
Zach Hickerson said when he arrived at the apartment, I knocked loudly, which apparently woke Brian up from a nap they were both taking on the pull-out couch in the living room. When he went in and tried to wake Hayden up for lunch, we realized she was unconscious. The brother then said, I immediately called 911, and Brian gave her Narcan. We then jointly performed CPR while 911 was on speaker.
In that same statement, he said something that changes how you have to read the early no foul play reports. I immediately called 911 and Brian gave her Narcan. Narcan is specifically used to reverse an opioid overdose, not something you'd have sitting around unless there was already a reason to think you might need it.
Narcan is not, this is not like an EpiPen that you take as a precaution. This is something that you take when you know that either what you're going to be using or what someone might be using is very heavy, very strong drugs that could then lead to, as we now know, something fatal.
That detail alone probably should have been the headline from day one. Instead, for those first few days, all anyone really heard was no signs of foul play. And this is where it gets harder to look past. Brian Hickerson isn't new to controversy where Hayden's concerned. Back in 2021, he faced a felony domestic violence charge involving her directly.
He had been accused by the actress of domestic abuse, particularly in her memoir just a few months back. The New York Times is reporting that back in March, only a few months before Hayden Panettiere died, she had reportedly hired security to keep Hickerson away. That court documents reveal he was sentenced to 45 days in jail after pleading no contest to 2 felony domestic violence charges for injuring Panettiere. Panettiere wrote in her memoir, "What I never told them was that the abuse I'd endured didn't feel as bad as the thought of being alone."
And multiple reports since her death say people close to her were genuinely uneasy about the two of them reconnecting recently.
Mia Terrazas, who claims to have been Hayden Panettiere's neighbor in West Hollywood, says that she called 911 at least a half a dozen times to report these disturbances, says that she absolutely saw signs of domestic violence with respect to Hickerson, telling the outlet, quote, "I saw her leaving on a gurney, Brian was right next to her, and I asked her if she was okay, and it looked to me that she had suffered some type of trauma that looked to be battering. It was clear she was terrified."
So you've got a man with a documented history of violence against her in the apartment when she died, who, by his own brother's account, administered an overdose reversal drug while that same brother made the call to 911.
Now you have the boyfriend who was involved, and he's got a criminal past. He's got a rap sheet. And so I think there's a lot more to it. I don't think this will be the end of this investigation. And
the DEA typically does not get involved in cases that appear to be suspected overdoses, even if there is possibly some suspicion of foul play. I would expect that the reason the DEA is involved is they believe that the substances that may have contributed to Hayden Panettiere's death may be connected to a person or organization that is already the subject of their investigation.
Nobody's saying that proves anything criminal happened, but it goes a long way toward explaining why federal investigators are now involved in a case that, on paper, looked wrapped up within 48 hours.
Well, there's a couple of ways that a crime could be involved here. I mean, it is certainly not immaterial that she died in the company of Brian Hickerson, who has been convicted of felony abuse against her. When women die, when they are murdered, it is very often by intimate partners. So absolutely that possibility needs to be part of any state investigation.
Because that's essentially what happened next. A search warrant was executed at the apartment. Police confirmed there's CCTV footage from the property showing all 3 of them, Hayden, Brian, and Zach, arriving and leaving. A few days after that, officers turned up at the Hickerson family home too, which police described as an unrelated welfare check. Maybe it really was unrelated. The timing just makes that a hard coincidence to ignore. Brian Hickerson's attorney put out a short statement afterward. Hayden's death remains under investigation, and it is important to allow that investigation to proceed. As has been publicly reported, police confirmed there were no signs of foul play.
I imagine, again, I don't know the practices in South Carolina, but I would imagine that once the toxicology is done, that report should be publicly available, just like autopsy reports are generally publicly available. The exception would be if there is an ongoing criminal investigation and there's a reason to keep those findings secret, either because they don't want to tip off the targets of the investigation or because they intend to present the findings to a grand jury and don't want to taint that process.
There will be no further comment at this time. Notice what that statement leans on and what it leaves out. It repeats the early, preliminary no foul play finding, but doesn't touch the Narcan, the search warrant, or why the DEA is now involved. Hayden's own mother has separately confirmed that a narcotics investigator was brought into the case.
Hayden Panettiere's estranged mother, Leslie Vogel, has now spoken out too, telling NBC in part, quote, "This person in her life that we've been trying to get rid of for quite some time was with her at her death, and that was Brian Hickerson."
And according to the New York Times and ABC News, the DEA has now formally joined the investigation alongside Greenville Police and the coroner's office. Toxicology results, which will actually determine cause of death, are still 8 to 12 weeks away. And this isn't just something spreading online quietly. It's loud enough that the people closest to it have had to respond publicly.
This is a case where she died because she was provided with some kind of illicit substance. Where do those substances come from? And is it possible to hold criminally accountable the person or persons that provided her with those substances. So there's really kind of two fronts in terms of looking at criminality: the possible involvement of the intimate partner or other persons that were actually present at the time that she potentially overdosed, and then kind of one step out, where did those substances come from?
Brian Hickerson's Instagram was flooded with comments after her death, people demanding answers. Zach Hickerson addressed it directly in his own statement, saying there were a lot of assumptions, speculations, and accusations currently swirling, and that he wanted to speak so he and his family could mourn without more noise and misinformation being added to it. To be fair, there's no public evidence linking Brian to her death, and police haven't named him a suspect. But it's also true this isn't the first time people around Hayden have raised concerns about this relationship.
Brian had actually administered Narcan to Hayden when he saw her on the floor. And what makes this fact interesting is that apparently when Hayden and Brian were headed to South Carolina together, they were bringing Narcan with them.
Back in 2019, her own mother told reporters plainly, "I don't trust his intentions." So here's honestly where things stand. Nobody's been charged with anything. No official cause of death yet. This could still end up being exactly what it looked like at first, a tragic accidental overdose. Nothing more sinister than that. But when a case goes from no foul play, basically routine, to the DEA is now involved in the span of about a week, and the people at the center of it feel the need to publicly push back on what people are saying, that's not nothing. This story clearly isn't finished.
And by the way, Hickerson himself even came out after this memoir was published, apologized for what happened, saying it was true, that he was in a dark place that included issues with substances, and that it was a, quote, terrible thing I did to her.
And all of this lands differently once you know who Hayden actually was in her final months, because just weeks before she died, she'd already sat down and told the world, in detail, about the darkest parts of her life. Reading some of it back now, it feels less like a memoir and more like a warning nobody caught in time. I have a lot more life left to live. That's what Hayden told a reporter in one of the last interviews she ever gave.
I've closed one door and another door is opened, and I can feel it open, and I can feel all the possibility, the possibilities, all the exciting possibilities. I feel like I have a lot more life to live.
Talking about getting sober, about being a mother, about finally putting the hardest years of her life behind her. By the time most people even think of her career starting, she'd already been working longer than most actors' entire careers last. She was baby modeling at 8 months old. Her first commercial came at 11 months. She'd done more than 50 commercials before she was even school age. By 4, she had her first TV role. From there, it just kept building. A Bug's Life, Remember the Titans, and eventually, as a teenager, the role that made her a household name, Claire Bennett on Heroes. According to Hayden, even as a kid, she could feel that growing up that way was doing something to her, that she'd basically been raised to trust the adults around her more than she trusted herself.
I don't want to live in a world where he doesn't exist.
You sadly lost your brother 3 years ago, and you describe him in the book as the heartbreak of my life, always right there in the center of who I am. How did...
That trust is really the thread running through everything she eventually revealed. Around 15, she says people close to her on set started giving her pills before red carpet appearances, telling her they'd give her more energy. She didn't question it much, because the person handing them over was someone she believed was protecting her. By 18, that same misplaced trust led her somewhere much darker. She said she was invited onto a boat by someone in the industry she trusted completely. Below deck, in her own words, she physically put me in the bed next to this undressed man who was very famous. She said he acted like it was nothing unusual for him, just an average day, something that happens all the time. Something in her switched on instantly. My hair stood on end and I became ferocious, she said. I was like, this is not happening. She got out and tried to hide somewhere else on the boat, though as she put it herself, there was nowhere to really go. No jumping off and swimming away. That same year, she says an NBC executive kissed her without asking at a party for her own show. Around 19, she says an Oscar-winning actor and director tricked her into looking down, claiming there was gum on his pants, and exposed himself to her. She never publicly named either man. She's also said opening up about postpartum depression cost her a decade-long partnership with Neutrogena. The company reportedly tried to drop her, citing a morality clause, before ultimately just not renewing her contract. And on Nashville, she said it went beyond just relating to her character. She said the writers were pulling details straight from her real life and writing them into the show, something she called very traumatizing, saying at times she genuinely didn't know where Juliet ended and Hayden began. In May 2026, she finally told the whole story in her own words, in her memoir, This Is Me, A Reckoning, covering everything we just went through, plus her addiction, an abusive relationship, loss, and recovery. 3 months after that book came out, she was gone. In the days since, tributes have come in from people who knew her, including Vladimir Klitschko, the retired boxing champion she was engaged to for years and shares her 11-year-old daughter, Kaya, with. He wrote that their family is in profound shock and grief and called her an important part of my life.
Her ex-boyfriend, Vladimir Klitschko, who shared a daughter with Panettiere today, asked those who loved Hayden to think about love and to be kind.
In a strange coincidence, hours before news of her death broke, Klitschko had posted something online about resilience, that it's not about surviving the hit, but about getting up and refusing to quit. Just a coincidence in timing, but it's the kind of detail that hits differently once you know what came right after. Here's what stays with me about all of this. Hayden spent years being known as the girl people saw on television, and toward the end of her life, she was finally trying to show people the person underneath that image and everything it had cost her just to survive it. Now there's an actual federal investigation into how her story ended, and the people closest to that day still haven't said much beyond one repeated line. No signs of foul play. Maybe that ends up being exactly true. Right now, though, it's a line that raises more questions than it answers. We'll keep following the investigation as more comes out. If this story affected you, like this video, subscribe to Spotlight Flow, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let us know in the comments. Do you think this ends up ruled an accident, or is there more here than we've been told?